Good evening. Welcome to the January 10th, 2024 meeting of the Town of Southampton Conservation Board. In accordance with the Town Board's adoption of Local Law Number 14 of 2022, the board's meetings are being held both in person at Town Hall and via video conference through Zoom webinar. The link to participate in this meeting via video conference can be found on the town's website at the town clerk's agendas and meetings portal. You can also watch live stream video and submit written comments for the public record through the town website. If you are attending via Zoom and wish to speak during this meeting, then please click the raise hand icon. As a reminder to all applicants, agents, and members of the public who wish to speak at the meeting, please state your name and Hamilton residence for the record. Thank you. I invite everyone to rise for the salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will wait on the December 20th minutes for the acceptance of the December 20th meeting minutes. Public hearings A021076, Nicholas Christopher and Penelope Christopher. The applicant requests adjournment to April 10th, 2024. Is there anyone in the public who'd like to speak to this application? Anybody on Zoom?
Motion to adjourn till April 10th, 2024.
Second?
All in favor? Opposed? And now we'll go back to the minutes of December 20th, 2023. What is your pleasure on the acceptance of those minutes?
Move to accept.
What date?
December 20th. You can't,
You weren't here.
you weren't here.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes of December 20th, 2023. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And one recuse. The next public hearing, A02304011 Shore Drive LLC.
Daphne's here.
She's here, okay.
Daphne Vaughn, Southampton Planning, for the applicant 11 West Shore Drive, LLC. So there should be a revised survey in the file that was submitted on Monday, earlier in the day. After the last hearing in November, we took the board's comments to heart and went back to the drawing board to see what kind of modifications we could make to make the project a little more palatable. So we did a small reduction in the footprint by about 211 square feet from the original approval. They expanded the second floor, so it's basically a box over a box similar to the house that's being built a few doors down. The only difference that it has this little added office area that was part of the original proposal on the first floor only, and that wraps around part of the proposed sanitary system. One of the main issues with the project was the 1,069 cubic yards of fill that we were proposing in our original proposal. We decided that it was better suited to put the sanitary system within a low retaining wall, so we can minimize the amount of fill and grading necessary on the property. So the retaining wall ranges in height from about 1.5 feet to 2.7 feet at its highest point, and it's about 2 feet off of the western lot line. It's just for the sanitary system, and the entire house itself has been moved over about 9 feet from our original proposal to 24 feet from the eastern lot line, because that's where the majority of the seasonal flooding comes from. So we're trying our best to get everything away from that area, just so that floodwaters can continue to pass through when necessary. The house will be on pilings, open piles. We changed the first floor elevation from 8, which is the minimum requirement for FEMA, to 10, which will just give some breathing room under the house to allow for any potential floodwaters, not only to better percolate, but maybe, just for air movement to help with evaporation of those waters in those flooding times. We still have basically the same decking, and there is a spa. The setbacks have basically remained the same as they were previously. There may be 1 foot off in some areas, because when you move the house to the west, you move a little bit closer to these pinch points of the wetland boundary. The drainage has all been relocated up close to the road in front of the sanitary system, and it will be installed at grade. We don't need to utilize fill for the drainage. The engineer is saying we can do it without the fill. So the fill went down to 312 cubic yards from that 1,069 cubic yards, and the majority of that, I believe it's 227 cubic yards, is for the elevation of the sanitary system. We have 85 cubic yards to elevate the proposed parking area over here by 1 foot, just so that there's safety for ingress and egress to the property during storm events and for the cars, for the homeowner. The buffer is still the same at 65 feet landward of the Bayside wetland boundary, which takes in the majority of that existing native grass area. My client is amenable to doing only native plantings over the sanitary and drainage. They could only really probably be beach grass or some other lower grass, because they're low underground, is that what I want to say? So you can't have any major root systems over these components. What else? I think that's the majority of the changes. I handed you the latest building plans just now, just to show you the house is still 4 bedrooms, as it was previously, and the architect, even with the elevating of the house, is showing that we can still comply with the town's pyramid law with this change and shift and elevation of the residence. So from my notes, those were the main issues that the board was looking for us to address. Do you have
Could
any
you
questions?
clarify, I'm looking at your latest survey, And I see on the seaward side, there's a deck, and on that deck is a spa. And to the east of the spa is a 5x7 hot tub.
What do you mean to the east of the spa? That's, isn't that the same thing? On the east side of the deck is, on the corner, is a 5x7 hot tub.
Okay, what's the spa?
It's the same. What, are you looking at something different? I'm confused.
I'm,
Oh, are you looking at the architect's plan?
yeah,
The architect,
I'm looking at this one, it's just passed out.
yeah, that, the survey is supposed to be based on that. I think the architect might have shrunk the spa slash hot tub to 4x6 on his plan because he wasn't accounting for the parts that go under the deck.
The hot tub says 5x7, it looks duplicate.
Yeah, it should be,
A
it should
spa
be
and a
just
hot tub,
one.
aren't they the same thing?
It's one thing, yes, yes. The survey shows accurately the accessory components of
Okay,
this.
then
The
that hot-
architectural plan may not have that accurate.
Okay, the hot tub then will not be standing, freestanding, it'll be on top of the deck. And that means it'll be elevated, right?
Well, oh, so he's showing it sunk in the deck. I think that that's what the plan is to sink it in the deck.
I'm just wondering
Um,
about, in a flood event, if it's gonna get wet.
Well, yeah, I guess that's possible.
I suppose a spa, a hot tub can get wet,
Yeah, yeah, I suppose.
but I'm thinking more of the workings of it, the
Yeah, because that
components.
would be the corner that would be within that 4-foot elevation where flooding is likely to occur in bad times. Yeah, I don't know that it needs to be sunken in the deck, and,
I was just looking for clarification. I
Yeah.
see two different things, I wanna know which one it is, but you clarified, so I appreciate that. I'll have more questions later, but I wanna hear what staff has to say.
okay.
Good evening, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. Just a few comments. Notwithstanding the minor reduction in square footage, as indicated by the key on the survey, the project plans that are being put forward would result in a significant increase in degree of wetland non-conformity. You can see that new residents can have a footprint about 2.5 times the size of the existing one-story cottage. One of the difficulties, of course, with this site is it's constrained between the bayside wetlands and the interior wetlands. My staff had an opportunity to visit the site this morning, and what I'd like to do is hand out photos that we're taking showing a significant degree of flooding that occurs at this fragile site. You do have a pack of those photos in your main file. And the photos are showing both the subject property and the adjacent property to the east. I would pay particular attention to the last set of photos, which are showing the portion of the property where the new residence would be built. The majority, well, at least part of the new residence, and you can see the degree of flooding that occurred in that area this morning. and which does occur with some frequency in the winter months, as evidenced by the aerial imagery that I shared with the board at the first hearing.
This morning at the meeting.
I had recommended several things at the first hearing.
Not so much over here, I mean, he had stands here.
In order to lessen the impacts to this environmentally fragile area. The first thing that I had recommended
This.
is that the amount of fill
Yeah, I agree.
that's going to be deposited on the site be significantly reduced. I had recommended that it be reserved to the amount of fill that's essential for the purposes of installation of the IA. It's good to see that the applicant has made a significant modification
Just like that.
in order to eliminate the prior fill that was proposed under the house, and to reserve the fill largely to the area within the septic retaining walls, with the exception of fill that would yet be placed within the proposed driveway area, which I see as largely unnecessary. I would again ask that the only fill deposition occur within the confines of the septic retaining wall as required by the health department. The second recommendation that I had made at the first hearing, which I stand by tonight, notwithstanding the minor reductions in the square footage, is the house needs to be shifted south. What we need to look to do is to shift the house and scale back the size of the house in order to get it out of that area where the flooding is most severe. As expressed at the first hearing, the most severe flooding occurs below the 4-foot contour infill, which you see on the proposed site plan that was presented tonight. That house could be shifted by making several changes to the design. First, the scale again of the residence could be reduced so it's more compatible with a site like this. And second, the stormwater drainage chambers could likely be installed beneath the elevated homes. It's actually become, the elevated home, it actually has become quite commonplace for that to be done today on constrained sites. And what that does is it frees up additional area for shifting of the home, scaling back of the home, and reconfiguration of the driveway. What I had recommended in my advisory report, and which I still recommend tonight, is not only that the residence be redesigned and shifted towards West Shore Drive to get as much of that residence and decks out of that area below the 4-foot contour, but I also asked that the buffer be expanded to the north or on the base side of the house. And one of the many reasons that I asked for that is not only so that the buffer takes in the area of severe flooding and that essential water retention area, but also that the absence of any buffer on the West Shore Drive side be mitigated or offset by additional buffering on the bay side. Notwithstanding the proposed elevation of the new home on pilings, the size of the house and the position of the house negates the ability to provide for a greater buffering area. Buffering areas are provided for many reasons. One is to lessen interference with natural flooding and drainage patterns. The second is to allow for a greater area of clean recharge and filtration of contaminants from water. Another reason is to increase the amount of habitat for native flora, insects, songbirds, and other wildlife. The habitat is when you set aside an area as native habitat, the best way to do that is to do it in as large of a block as possible, because then it becomes a lot more functional than fragments or remnant or accessory areas of native landscaping. I'm happy to hear that the applicant has an interest in using native plants for landscaping. It was somewhat unclear to me as to whether or not they were amenable to landscaping all disturbed ground and would have any buffers with native plants. I heard them say that they would plant the area atop the septic system with natives, but I'm not sure whether or not the remainder of the disturbed ground would be re-vegetated with native plants as well. The building of a home over an area that is going to be compromised by significant floodwater never makes sense. It interferes with the ecosystem. It poses the risk of greater contamination of groundwater, surface waters, and wetlands. And it obviously interferes with water retention and natural flooding and drainage patterns. When a project plan like this comes forward, initially I look for the applicant to take the initiative to come back with a revised plan that's more consistent with my recommendations. But as the plans, with the exception of the fill, have not significantly changed, I'm happy if it's beneficial to the board to prepare a drawing for the board to consider showing a possible practicable alternative in terms of design, with, again, the goal of shifting their residents out of the area where the most severe flooding typically occurs, and getting, and where necessary, scaling back the residents. Usually I start by just taking the basic footprint of the residents and seeing what I can achieve by shifting that without reduction. And then if there is a need for reduction in the scale in order to achieve the goals in terms of wetlands protection, then I look to see whether or not initially minor changes can be made to the plan rather than very significant changes. So this, I'm sure the board members know this area well. These are not the only properties that flood in this area. The major flooding is not related to the bayside. If you go to the bayside of this property, what you'll see is a sanded cobble beach, and then a rise or sand berm. And then you have interior lowland. Typically, when I observe the flooding on this property, it appears to be a consequence of shallow groundwater and elevated groundwater conditions, rather than a surface spillover of water from the interior freshwater wetlands. Years ago, the road was primarily earthen, and oftentimes it was underwater as well. Some stone had been placed down over the years. So my staff had indicated that today they could reach the property, but after that, the remainder of the road was underwater. So you're looking at a plan right now that does not conform with the wetland permit issuance standards, as it greatly increases the degree of wetland nonconformity. Remember that for an existing developed site, the minimum required wetland construction and buffer setbacks are 100 feet and 75 feet. Obviously, the constraints of the property and the abutting wetlands prevent the applicant from achieving those setbacks, but where you can't achieve those setbacks, the burden is on the applicant to demonstrate that they are maximizing setbacks, maximizing buffers, minimizing the impact on the land and buffering area, and that the mitigation that they're offering is sufficient to offset the impacts resulting from the lesser setback.
Marty, I was wondering,
setbacks.
I was
Yes.
wondering if you could help me, because I don't understand it, maybe you could help me understand.
Yes.
If the house is gonna be on pilings, how does shifting the house mitigate any flooding on the property? I'm not sure how that works.
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, I would offer that it never makes sense for the town to approve a house that's going to be standing over open water, oftentimes during the winter months. That creates not only a risk for the owner in terms of mold and decay of the residence. It can present access issues when there's an emergency, and it also poses risk of contamination. Although the new house may be standing on pilings, in virtually all cases where an applicant home is built on pilings, that area below the house is used for storage purposes, and it's the storage of materials below the house that oftentimes can pose risk of contamination. Again, the conditions of this property is that you have a major part that floods, and that's part of the natural ecosystem and the greater wetland ecosystem in this area. So you want to do what you can to limit or avoid impacts to the most sensitive portions of the land, and those would be the portions that flood most frequently. As indicated at the first hearing on this application, I have been at this property in years past when the entire property was underwater, and there was water surrounding the existing cottage. So, as evidenced by the aerial imagery, the flooding conditions can get a lot worse. So I think the town should not only do everything they can to protect the hydrology of the wetland ecosystem, but also to minimize the risk of contamination and ensure that the residence is safe for future occupants. And I think permitting a house above water runs counter to all those goals. Thank you.
Stephanie, I had an observation. I stopped by the property today, and I don't know if this was an extraordinary kind of storm, but I was amazed by the house next door to this house. The house was from the water to the road,
To the east, right?
and you had some standing water on your property. And, I mean, the applicant's property, sorry. I know you haven't reached that level yet, but, all right. This is from left field, okay? I noticed that the property slants a little towards that flooded house. Is there any chance any kind of retaining wall would mitigate any of that flooding? Or am I way out
A
in left
retaining
field?
wall for my guy's property or for the?
No, for the neighbor's property.
So, okay, so,
Well, that's what that's one of the reasons why we didn't want to bring in so much fill. We're
Right.
afraid of it,
You're
exacerbate.
you're asking for a retaining wall on her client's property to prevent water from her client's property going to the neighbor's property.
There you go. Did I not make that clear? Sorry.
so, okay. I don't know that, there's a lot of things I have to say right now. My office also went to the property today, so I'm surprised none of us ran into each other. We took our own photos, and what I see in these photos is why I should be putting the house exactly where I'm putting it, and why the sanitary system has to be where it's proposed, because that part is the driest part of the property. The drainage should not be underneath the house. That's not going to be any benefit. The drainage will not function if it's underneath the house, because in an event like this, the drainage will be sitting in water. So we thought about all of these things in our redesign, knowing that there is opportunity for these big storm events like last night to occur. And in looking at this, the majority of the property is on the adjacent neighbor's property. Is putting a wall on this property going to alleviate that? No, I don't think so, on that side. We did the sanitary wall, and it's very low. 2.5 feet is the highest, essentially, to alleviate the amount of fill necessary for the grading that's required by the health department for the sanitary installation. We pushed everything away from that 4-foot contour to try to alleviate any structures being over open water. Does this, what occurred last night, occur all the time? No, it does not. It occurs regularly throughout the winter. I did have a conversation with the person who owns that property. And he told me that, yes, the property does have water on it. His property has water on it in the winter. This property, as you can see, kind of takes whatever can't fit on his and goes into that grass. I think that the reason we have the driveway elevated is for health and safety, so that you can have the car hopefully out of water in the majority of these storm events. Anything that's going to be more than a foot of water on the property, which may be a big hurricane, maybe not as big as Sandy, but maybe something intermediary, will allow for the cars to be safe and for safe passage onto the property in an emergency situation, because that's something that also needs to be thought about. What else?
Would you plan to have that fill contained if you did that?
Well, it would be graded, and it's a foot, so a foot is not very big in the grand scheme of things for a driveway. And as you can see, that's over probably 5 feet, that elevation.
Well, I only meant, is there gonna be any stone around it, some 6x6s?
I would imagine that could be planted just to hold that small grade. To address Marty's question about planting, I did say earlier in my presentation that they would be amenable to planting native vegetation over this entire section of the property because it would be drainage and sanitary. I would imagine that they would like to maintain some form of grass or something just for access around the house. I mean, if somebody has a dog who lives here or whatever, I don't know. Just to have that usable space, because there would be effectively no yard. Not that that's a huge priority. What else?
Daphne, would you comment on the area inside of the proposed retaining wall designated as a septic system? Is that area expected to be fairly level, or is it tapered?
It should be pretty level, as far as the grade is concerned. It also does not 100% meet health department requirements. It's like a foot too close in some of these areas, so we would have to go to the Board of Review for the health department for this, where previously it was fully compliant.
What's too close?
The components by 1 foot. Typically, in years past, the health department would allow for you to have components at 5 feet and just file a covenant. But with the IA systems, anything that doesn't meet a 10-foot setback, now it has to go to a Board of Review, and it's up to them whether they want to approve it, and then you would still more than likely have to file a health department covenant stating, that the system is not 100% compliant with their requirements.
So the components are the ones that are not compliant, but the retaining wall is?
It's really a landscape wall because it's not 4 feet high. It would be 1.5 to 2.5 feet, so it's considered a landscape wall. However, it's a wall. So in the eyes of the health department, it's still supposed to meet a 10-foot setback, where without the wall, we only have to meet a 5-foot setback to a property line. But when there's grading involved, you need to have adequate grading from the components to grade.
What I'm asking the questions about for is that as I look at that, and as I hear the height of that wall, and I assume that is the height from grade,
Yes,
that's not a very high wall.
no,
And there's a fairly good distance between the wall and the components. And I'm not convinced of the necessity of the wall for the functioning of the septic system and for the placement of the septic system. I'm not sure that it allows for a reduction in fill. And I'm not sure that what if the wall was not there and the fill was tapered to somewhere near where the wall begins, if it wouldn't reduce the amount of fill and alleviate the necessity for a wall.
so I'm a little confused by this because we had a design similar to exactly what you described previously, and we were told to tighten up the fill. So this is essentially the solution to that, because in order to do what you're saying, we have to spread this out more for the adequate grade change per the health department requirements. I don't think that you would be able to have the change that's needed per the requirements of the health department with, even though the wall is low. To address the height of the house, which is something else that's important, Us raising it 2 feet is really raising it only about 3 feet above grade till you get to the freeboard for the first floor. The first floor elevation is where you're physically walking in the house. So FEMA says we're in an AE6 flood zone, and you're supposed to be at elevation 8, where you're walking. So if this is elevation 4 under the house, then you really need to be 4 feet above grade where you're walking. But the building department calls for 2 feet of freeboard, which is the components to construct underneath the house. So in this case, we're only gonna be about 3 feet, 3 to 4 feet, I guess, from grade to those components, and that's actually shown in the cross-section on the plans I just gave you. So as far as Marty's concerned, for us to have storage of materials under there, there's not gonna be a lot of opportunity because no one will be able to walk underneath this. This is not one of your Dune Road, VE 15 homes. This is still gonna be fairly low, but high enough to be alleviated from floodwaters. The water will be able to pass under there as needed because it will be open piles. So I doubt that anyone would want to store anything of significance under this house except for maybe a kayak.
And those structures for stormwater chambers, is that entirely to catch the runoff from the roof?
Yes, that's for the roof and the spa, and that's sufficient for all of that area. Any change to the footprint of the house to reduce it is not gonna make a heck of a lot of difference here because all you're gonna really do is potentially slightly decrease the amount of drainage needed. The sanitary system would still be the same. There would be no change to that because this is the minimum system that you need to construct, even if it was a 3-bedroom house. This is what the health department requires.
Maury did suggest putting the drainage structures under the house, and you said they would not be functional. And you may be right. I'm looking at the test hole data, which is taken approximately close to the center of the house. And groundwater is at elevation 1.4, which is about 3 feet below grade.
Yes,
And those structures are what, 2 feet high,
18 inches, I believe.
18 inches?
They're shown.
And there'd be some filter cloth and some fill on top of those. But I look at the property in these pictures that were taken today, and I'm not sure that anything is gonna work to prevent that flooding from happening. And that's with all the water going right across, evenly across the property, all the rainfall. These structures would absorb that rainfall during the storm. Of course, nothing after that. So I'm not sure how functional they would need to be with a big storm like this. They'd be more functional for a smaller storm.
Right.
But if the structures were placed under the house and the whole structure systems were to be moved closer to the road, I calculate something like 23 feet. What is the minimum distance from the road?
What's the minimum
For-
distance for?
For, if the drainage structures were not there, then the closest structure proposed would be the proposed retaining wall. That can be fairly close to the road by health department regulations.
Well, it could be on the road. However, you have to remember, we're juggling 2 wetland boundaries here. So the existing residence is way down here over where the sanitary system is, the beginnings of it at least. It's more like right here on the survey. So what we've done is replace the residence with the most important components of the new development being the sanitary and the drainage, so that well, at least the sanitary will usually, I would assume, never be sitting in groundwater unless you get another Hurricane Sandy. However, relocation of the house doesn't really change anything, except that I have to go back to the DEC and see if they would even consider that, because as I stated at the last meeting, the DEC approved the project as it was proposed previously, without any of these changes. These changes would warrant me going for a modification, and we've held the structural setbacks that were already approved by the DEC, so I would not see this as an issue for their reapproval. But once you start changing the location of the house closer to one side or the other, that may pose an issue.
Marty, Shay, let's move this. Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. First, it's unclear as to whether or not the DEC is aware of the severe flooding problems and challenges that we're looking at. If you visit the property in the summer months, it's not flooded at that time. In that regard, I'm happy to get a letter to the DEC and make them aware of the flooding that occurs here, so that they would be perhaps more amenable to considering greater flexibility in modifying the project plans. Just to provide some clarity, I'm not looking for the drainage chambers as proposed to be put under the house in this, the house in the proposed dwelling location. What I'm looking for is for the house to be scaled back in size and shifted close to the West Shore Drive. And he only indicated that when you go through that exercise and look at design options, you're going to look at whether or not it makes sense to shift the retaining wall septic system area close to the road. You're going to look at whether or not it makes sense to put a part of that drainage onto the house. So I'm not looking for that drainage to go in the area of the property where we have the worst flooding. That would not make sense at all. So, I'm just looking at these project plans, and again, this is an extremely fragile area. The applicant is looking to get approval for a development plan that's 2.5 times the size of the existing residence at this time. It would greatly increase degree of nonconformity, and I think that runs counter to the wetland permit issuance standards. I can't see how I can't see where a case could be made that these plans are consistent with direction set by Chapter 325 and the stringent standards. So again, as offered earlier, in the event that the hearing is adjourned tonight, I'm happy to come back to the board at the next hearing with a drawing to show a practical alternative in terms of design for this site that would address many of my concerns. The board may be aware that we had received emails from the public in which they expressed concern about this project. They also forwarded site photos as well. So we may have some members of the public that would like to speak tonight. So I would ask that the board open up the hearing to the, thank you.
A couple of questions first. Daphne, does the DEC regulate that freshwater wetland across the street?
Yes.
How big is that?
How big is that wetland? It's huge.
Okay.
I think I passed out aerials last time that show the extent of that. It actually wraps around a significant area.
All right. They also regulate Little Peconic Bay, or rather the setback from Little Peconic Bay.
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that I think about on this is I look at your plan, and although you go step by step and you justify various things, and I'm looking at it, and I see a lot of disturbance that has structures, with this drainage structure, septic system, driveway, house. It takes up a fairly large part of that property. I don't know what all the impacts are from that. And that's one reason why it's difficult to figure out sequentially going through the various steps to see if we can mitigate all the impacts. If it was a smaller project, it seems like that would be helpful, but I haven't thought it through enough to know just what can be, what impact can be reduced by making the project smaller. Certainly, if it was smaller, there'd be more opportunity to bring the setback of the structures in compliance with Chapter 325, and also the proposed buffer in compliance. On the Peconic Bay side, on the wetland side across the street, it's impossible to. But there is a road, there is disturbance already, there is activity there, and the thrust of what I've been hearing so far, and by the board's comments and staff, has been primarily to protect the Little Peconic Bay wetland side rather than across the street. You're trying to juggle a house in a place that does both.
I don't see how there's any less value to the wetlands across the street. In fact, they should almost be more valuable, because that's where the wildlife is inhabiting. There you have probably birds and turtles and all kinds of wildlife taking advantage of that wetland. Granted, of course, the bay is important, but both of them should be equally valuable, because this is not a puddle. This is a significant wetland that wraps around the entire south, west, and east of here. There are a few homes on this wetland down in this area, but they're completely surrounded by wetlands vegetation. I want to bring to the board's attention the precedent that was set on the property a few doors down. The size of that house is larger by leaps and bounds than what was there previously. They also have a 6-foot-high retaining wall with a very significant amount of fill, and their entire parking will be within that retaining wall. It's essentially a moat, and anybody who went there today may have seen that property is also surrounded by water. So it's not just this area that's having this problem, it's a neighborhood issue. We're proposing significantly less fill, much lower walls, only for the sanitary, not for the house or anything else. They have a large pool. They have a 10-foot-high retaining wall on one side for the pool and steps, and a 2-story garage pool house structure that's 800 square feet in footprint on top of the existing house that's now under construction that's similar in size to this. This project is in keeping with what was approved on that other property for this size property. And yes, there is a lot of disturbance involved with this, but with any project, you're going to have that because septic upgrade is required. Drainage, significant drainage, is required by the town and the DEC. You have to have parking. The zoning code requires parking, so I don't know how you could build anything on this property that you would not have the same amount of disturbance.
Okay. Any other questions by the board? At this point, I'm going to ask if the public has, if anyone in the public wants to speak to this application. Yes.
Printed out a few packets from the neighborhood. I was also at the property today.
They just need a second.
Sorry. They're also not just from today. They're all the same. There's three.
No problem.
Thank you.
Good evening to all members of the board. My name is Carol O'Connor. I've been a homeowner on Edgemere Drive for 36 years. I work in a...
Carol, whereabouts do you live in terms of this property? I know where Edgemere is, but I just don't know how far.
I
Edgemere
live
goes
almost
quite
at Oak Grove Road. That's the one in the first Baby Oaks entry, towards the west.
quite a ways down.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, 8-minute walk.
that's good.
I work in a local library and I raised my children here. This area of North Sea is a beautiful ecosystem. Peconic Bay to the north, freshwater ponds, marshes, and a freshwater stream that runs along the north side of Edgemere Drive, flowing into the large marsh that borders West Shore Drive, Edgemere Drive, and Bayview Drive. There are owls, osprey, turtles, peepers, frogs, shorebirds, starlings, and red-winged blackbirds that flock to the marsh. Many summer cottages have sold in recent years, and large houses have replaced them, altering the community and ecosystem. The construction vehicles have damaged the small dirt roads, and flooding has increased due to development. The proposed development of 11 West Shore is very concerning, considering the fragility of the property. The amount of fill that will be trucked in will adversely affect the neighboring homes by causing more flooding to the east and west. Large trucks will damage native grasses along the marsh and cause the road to collapse more on the south side where the marsh is. The new house that is under construction, 2 houses to the west, has already caused increased flooding and irreparable damage to the road and marsh. Just this morning, it was surrounded by a moat. West Shore Drive is a small dirt road, at some points as narrow as 8 feet. This area is not cut out for this type of development. I encourage the members of the board to take a drive, to look at the neighborhood, maybe catch a beautiful sunset, and see firsthand how this project would have adverse impacts to the neighboring homes and to all that walk, run, bike, and explore this area. Lastly, the assumption that the property owner made that he could build a house similar to the construction 2 houses west is laughable and disturbing. This is the last thing that should happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Catherine. I'm her daughter. And I'm also a homeowner in the North Sea area of Southampton town. It's 0.3 miles from the proposed development property.
East or west?
East. Thank you. First, it is a privilege to live in this community and one that I appreciate more and more each day. To start, I'd like to bring your attention to the first few sentences of Chapter 25 of the Southampton Town Code regarding wetland policy. It states the following. It is a further policy of this board to achieve no overall net loss of the town's remaining wetlands and to restore and create wetlands where prudent and necessary to offset losses and increase the quantity and quality of the town's wetland resource base. Additionally, the town of Southampton shall seek to avoid or minimize damage to wetlands to the maximum extent possible by establishing local land use controls which place a priority on the protection of natural vegetation and the preservation of wetland buffer zones. I grew up on Edgemere Drive and have seen over the past 27 years the neighborhood go through changes, both positive and some that we desperately wish we thought through more thoroughly, like the project 2 properties down from this one. This is why we're here today. The section of land that is being discussed for development is a highly sensitive one. Chapter 325 also states that in situations similar to this, that the loss of wetlands and lack of conservation measures deprive Southampton citizens not only of a healthy living environment, but of a healthy economy. The marsh across from the street from 11 West Shore Drive is home to various species of waterfowl, small mammals, and box turtles. It also functions as a key natural resource to support the water health of the marsh and surrounding houses. This property, its neighbors, and the dirt road floods easily when it rains only small amounts, not just the storm from today. The flooding has increased both with the increased rainfall in recent years and the increase in development along the road. We believe that with the amount of fill proposed in the plan and the massive structure being built, over double the current footprint size, not including the driveway that was mentioned, that there would be catastrophic impacts on flooding and water pollution in the area. Lastly, as we've seen with these types of developments over the past decades, the environmental concerns don't exactly end with completion of construction. The continuing concerns post-construction include landscaping, like the grass lawn that was mentioned, clear cutting, planting non-native plants, use of pesticides, illegal attempts to fill or pave wetland roads, and more. These concerns are only exacerbated by the proximity of this property to both the wetlands and Peconic Bay, both waterways that contain endangered species and are places that families and children enjoy swimming in daily. People come to an area or oasis because they love it, and we're sure that's why this person bought this property. Its views are undeniably beautiful. What we hope to change at this point in time is the owner's ability to destroy the local ecosystem and the character of this neighborhood with their desire to build a house that is more than double the footprint of the one there now. We have seen the impacts of climate change on our shores. We know how flooding and wind affects this property and this road. We have faith that this board will not allow a project of this magnitude to destroy a fragile ecosystem and the sensitive natural beauty mere feet away from this proposed new structure, but instead will support a plan being created that matches the current footprint and promises to caretake for the ecosystem around it. We wanted to pose a few questions. I didn't know how this worked. Can we ask questions?
You direct questions to the board.
Okay, great. I'm just gonna say them. You can answer them whenever. We were wondering if this house is going to be someone's primary residence or simply another spec house to be sold for profit. We also were wondering if the materials that are going to be used in the ground, fill, etc., are permitted environmentally in these wetlands. And then the last wetland boundary measurement that was named in the previous meeting, the date was slightly unclear. We were wondering when that was made and if possible, if we could request a new one to be assessed. Thanks.
The answer to a couple of the questions
Sure.
is that materials have to pass muster so that they would not be treated lumber near the wetlands. The wetland line is not clear.
It sounded like the date of the last wetland boundary might have been in 2017, but we weren't sure. And so we were just wondering when that was, and if it has been more than a few years that have passed. There have been a number of storms that have overflowed this area, and it might be worth.
Whether it's a spec or a primary residence really doesn't have an influence on us. It's an application.
We thought we'd just
Yeah,
ask.
that's the way we look at it.
March 30th,
Would you mind signing
2022.
in, please?
Yeah,
And will you submit those comments in writing?
I would love to.
That's great. Thank you.
Sorry, you said March?
March 30th, 2022 is listed on the survey. It's the name on the delineated by Daphne Vaughn, who's present. Whenever that happens, our staff always verifies.
Cool. Thank you. Hello.
Would you mind signing in also, please?
Yes, sign it.
And you will submit your comments?
Yes, mine are handwritten, but I will type them out.
That's okay, we can struggle through it.
Hello, my name is Allison, and I'm also a resident of Southampton Town. I would like to thank you for your time and for allowing us this space to be heard tonight. I've never attended a conservation board hearing, but after years of continued overdevelopment surrounding the home I grew up in, I felt obligated to attend when I heard about this proposed development. The large scale of the proposed plans for this wetland area cannot go unnoticed. How can we, in good conscience, allow a house of this scale to be built when the weather and climate impacts are right in front of us with every storm? As you've seen in the photos displayed today, this specific plot is highly susceptible to flooding. It's only a matter of time before this home ends up underwater, destroyed, or abandoned, and at what cost to the natural resources in the bay and the marsh? At what cost to the neighbors whose homes will certainly be adversely impacted? The marsh is meant to act as a sponge of sorts, to absorb sea levels as they rise. If we keep filling it and allowing development and infrastructure like septic systems, we are setting the stage for more disaster and destruction. All the federal disaster money for the recovery from these massive storms, like Sandy, as previously mentioned, as well as many others, is our taxpayer dollars. We do not want to keep paying for the luxury of someone getting a front row seat to a water view. It is my hope that in decades to come, our children, as well as ourselves, will be able to experience the beauty of the Peconic Bay and the wetlands, and understand that it is a privilege we must work to protect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, thanks for your help. My name's Eddie O'Connor. I've also lived right in this area for a really long time. Appreciate your efforts. My observations in this area, it's always flooded. It's flooded in the summer. It is wetlands. I love what the Marty Shea said because it's all water. These little drainage things are going to be underwater most of the time. There is incredibly fragile wetlands right there. Pete Topping was in there today, and I worked with him a little bit. And yeah, it's rough. 2.5 times the size of the existing structure. I was on the property yesterday, and you know, the thing is, the water has to go somewhere. And years ago, they completely disturbed and filled in the east side of Woolly Pond. So this whole drainage no longer gets to go to the west into there. And so it's always been flooded. And groundwater is right there. It does come up and drain from the hill to the east. So this water has nowhere to go. And so I appreciate your concern in looking into this, and I hope the structure is reduced in its size. And that's it. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I guess adjournment.
Let's summarize where we've been tonight and sketch out what we have left to do. From the last meeting to this meeting, you have reduced the fill, you have made some adjustments to the house, and so thank you for that. That's beneficial. Whether it's enough is the question.
Excuse me, Chairman, there may be someone on Zoom.
Kevin, do we have somebody else?
Looks like we have one person.
Is somebody on Zoom right now?
Yeah, one person with their hand up.
Okay, let's do that one now.
How strict are they with that 8:30 point downstairs? The 8:30, how strict are they?
We need to end the meeting at 8:30.
Okay.
Is somebody coming on?
Unmute, yes.
Yeah, they're just joining right now.
All right. Start my video. Can everybody hear me on the Conservation Board?
We can hear you, go ahead.
Okay, hello, yes, my name is Jeff Gakel, and I'm a property owner at 131 Edgemere Drive, approximately a half mile up the road from 11 Shore Drive. And I just have a question for the Conservation Board and the town of Southampton. And the question is, what sort of liability does this project expose the Conservation Board and the town to, if approved? My reason for this question is, if you look at the projected sea level rise scenario for this area from the state of New York, there will be a projected 12-inch sea level rise in the next 30 years within this area that will inundate most of Shore Drive, part of Bayview Drive, all of the wetland, and 1 to 1.5 properties to the east of 11 Shore Drive. And so it goes back to some of the earlier comments in tonight's meeting, in that if this project gets approved, what do we anticipate in the future, and what sort of liability does the city or town and the Conservation Board put themselves at if there's damages done to these properties and life under these scenarios? It's just a question. Doesn't have to be answered now.
Let's try to answer that. We can't anticipate what type of litigation would happen in the future, but as long as the Conservation Board's determination is reasonable and it's not arbitrary, then it would generally be upheld in a court. If anything happened in the future, there are statute of limitations issues also. So there are things that are based on the issuance of a permit. There would be time limitations for that. As far as any neighbors or anyone wanting to do anything, they would really have to consult with their own attorneys. But generally, as far as a permit is reasonable in compliance with Chapter 325, then the Conservation Board is not going to be subject to liability.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else on Zoom, Kevin?
Yeah, we have another hand up.
Hello?
We hear you, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I can't have video at the moment, but my name is Luke O'Connor. I also grew up and a resident of 138 Edgemere Drive, 0.3 miles east of 11 West Shore Drive. I don't have much to say that hasn't been said already. Everything seems very relevant, but just from a neighborhood standpoint, I know the board we're not talking appealing personally or anything, but the woman who's representing the client, on a personal note, it's troubling that the owner of the property is not even present. I know it may not impact the board's decision, but if I can, that's not a comment I'd like to make. Maybe their presence isn't, it's not mandatory, but it's troubling as a member of the neighborhood that they have no interest in, being personally present. I understand after this house was sold, it became clear that it's 11 and 13 West Shore Drive are two separate properties, but the representative of the owner made a statement about how it's the water on 11 West Shore Drive is overflow from the neighbor's property. And since the early 90s, riding bikes and living down this road, it's never appeared that it's anything other than something that fills up with water around the year, whenever it rains, whenever there's a surge. It's not, doesn't seem, oh, it's coming from one side or the other, and it's just been exacerbated over the years. The construction down the road a few years ago, I believe it's 35 West Shore Drive, was not well contained, and there was debris and garbage blowing into there's a small stream that runs along Edgemere Drive there that goes into the marsh. There was garbage and, between construction workers, plastic litter and food garbage, and then construction garbage from the wind coming off the bay. In the wintertime, when this, construction will probably take place, or however many years it takes, if, in the unfortunate case that a project like this gets approved in a place like this. But what we've seen in the past along this stretch is consistent non-compliance to whether or not it's exactly legal, but to the surrounding areas. And the biggest thing I'm hearing in this meeting, and it just sounds like the client, the homeowner is trying to maximize their footprint and stretch it as far as they can, which as much as you say it doesn't impact your decision, they have no interest in this property aside from, maybe they'll see a few sunsets, maybe they'll rent it and make some money, maybe they'll sell it and make some money, but it makes it very clear the way this planning seems to be going from there, and they just want to make it as big as possible and as small an area as possible. I have a concern about, the comment was made, if the hot tub is sunken into the deck and the water level rising gets damaged. Well, what is also the damage of the hot tub failing, chemicals leaking out, depending on how it's made? It just seems like it's irresponsible to put something there, not to mention the warm ocean, the warm bay water walking distance. I understand that in these situations precedent is set, but using the, if it's 11 Beach Road, using that as a reference for why this project should proceed is irresponsible. And maybe, as a homeowner, as a representative of a homeowner, you want to make a client happy, or the client wants to be happy, but one look at that place, it's compared to what was there, and whenever the permits went through in the neighborhood, we know better now, but we didn't know then what was going on in a place like that. And seeing it now, it's sad to see what's going on. And it's an ugly house, and maybe it's, the person has a plan, but something like that doesn't need to happen 100 yards away just because it happened somewhere else. And as it was stated, the wetlands have been impacted by several feet from construction. Just because construction vehicles fitting down that road were too large, and they dumped gravel, which is caving out. My brother and our neighbor had to help visit some people that were staying down the road who got their sports car stuck in the gravel because the road caved out on the side as they tried to drive down. It's ultimately, it sounds like, I understand as people have a right to appeal to the board, and it's good the process exists, and thank you to the board for hearing all of us, but this project sounds like it's a square peg trying to be fit in a round hole, and it just seems irresponsible based on what Marty Shea said, it doesn't sound like anything that's been proposed so far has any environmental standing to be constructed. And I speak from a personal note because we fortunate enough to grow up down the road, but just even zooming out and looking from a bird's eye view, there's no reason that a house this size needs to be constructed. And I urge the board to really heavily consider the environmental impacts, and I appreciate they already are. That's my piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, is there anyone else?
One more person.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Darla Stahecki. I am a owner of a property at 61 Peconic Bay Avenue, which is on the corner of both Peconic Bay Avenue and Bayview Drive. So my home and driveway are on Bayview Drive, and as you know, Bayview Drive connects to West Shore Road, where this project is. I have lived here, my parents actually bought this home when I was 6 months old, so I think I can give everyone a pretty good glimpse, having lived here for my entire 50 years of my life. And I can share that actually when I was a little girl, I would go to the subject property, and given that water was always there in the wintertime, it made a very nice ice skating rink. And I used to have fun going over there and playing there. In listening to all of this tonight, it's hard for me to understand what's being proposed to be built there. We are all living now with the new project that's taking place at 11 Beach Road, which my understanding that was approved some time ago, but is a large hulking property. And although I do admire and like the person that owns that home, I do feel it is way too large for this area, and I think that to take this new property and look at that as the baseline is really just extraordinary. This entire area is being destroyed by these projects. I only wish that the town of Southampton would consider buying a piece of property like this and preserving it, because I think that is the real solution here. There's also another project that I believe is still pending for your approval, that is at 11 Bayview Drive, and again, that's going to be at least 2,000 square feet with retaining walls, etc. But I just want to share a little bit without taking too much of your time, and I will certainly gladly put this all into writing. But having been here for 50 years, I have truly seen the change. Today is a perfect example of that, where it floods constantly here, whether you be on Peconic Bay Avenue or you do walk in the back along West Shore Drive. It does not take a major storm to flood. I have to call, and on a regular basis now, I had to call first thing Monday morning when this area sat in water for over 24 hours. I have to call the town highway department and ask for them to have the foreman come out, assess the area, and then the town will bring the payloader to open up the bay so that we can actually get out. I think you can understand this is a huge life safety issue. And that's first and foremost. If someone needed an ambulance, if there is a fire, you are not just driving through these waters to get to us. So that is first and foremost. We flooded again today, and I know pretty much we will also be flooding on Saturday. This is not about the winter time. This is about all seasons. Probably the only exception where it's a bit drier, of course, is the summertime. But I can tell you, as someone who has a sump pump, and be fall, winter, spring, these are regular events here, and it does not take a Hurricane Sandy. In listening to the proposal of having a car and worrying about it in a hurricane, your car will not be there if there is a hurricane. It will be in the Peconic Bay. I was here during Hurricane Sandy. I shouldn't have been here. I was here, and I will tell you, it was frightening what happened. I've been here through numerous nor'easters. This is a area that floods very, very, very easily. And anything that's done here that, and which is already being done with 11 Beach Drive and some of the other proposed, is really, really concerning as a homeowner of where is this water going to go? What are these cement, these retaining walls? Yes, I understand you're trying to create a bathtub of sorts. The water's flowing in, the water's flowing out. But at the end of the day, as someone else said, the water does have to go somewhere. And it's going to go to the lowest points. In Hurricane Sandy is a very good example, and pardon me for taking too long, and I will stop in a minute. the wetlands couldn't even do their job in Hurricane Sandy. The wetlands is supposed to act like a sponge, and I know, Marcia, you know way more about this than I know. But the wetlands couldn't even absorb that. And in the event of Hurricane Sandy, what was interesting about it was normally, yes, the water comes up and goes up Peconic Bay Avenue. But what happened in Sandy was the rear also flooded where the wetlands are, so the water was coming from all directions. So it was a massive event. To put into perspective, on Bayview Drive, the water was up to my hips, and I'm 5'8" and I have fairly long legs. So you can imagine how much water that was. And I won't even waste the board's time to listen to how that water got out that night in the middle of that storm. But again, I really implore all of you, I implore you to come here. I will write you a letter to explain more of this in detail. But this is a very fragile area. I understand the concern of this being so close on both sides and the boundaries here, but this really needs to be looked at much harder. And you're all, as the homeowner or this, the owner of this property, you're really fooling yourself if you think that, yeah, this is a great home in the summertime. But with El Nino and all the climate changes, things aren't the way they used to be anymore. So whatever is built here really needs to be taken under very strong consideration. And for the board, I know you have a very difficult job doing this, and really, really protecting this community, and making sure that it is here for our children and our grandchildren, etc. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Kevin, is there anyone else?
That's all.
So to wrap things up, we need to adjourn this to another date. What we want to do here is just explore alternatives, continue to, as Chapter 25 directs us to. It has been suggested to keep the construction outside of the 4-foot contour. Don't know if that's possible, but see if you can achieve that. See if you can tighten up anything else here to do that, perhaps reduce the size of the structure, the footprint. You've heard the comments from the public, you've heard the comments from the staff and the board. Don't need to go over that. You are entitled to a house on this property, there's no question that, you have a constitutional right to that, that's not a question here. But just the location, the size, and all the appendages to that are questions. We have to keep moving because there's other things going on here, we've got a lot of agenda ahead of us, and do we need to end the meeting, or do you need to leave?
The meeting needs to end at 8:30. That's what we've been told by maintenance. I can see if you can get a few extra minutes.
Why do we have to end?
Because they're
downstairs
gonna-
or up here?
I'll go and speak to them. They have to COVID fog the building. All right.
The whole
So
building?
I'll go and speak to them.
We cannot end by 8:30.
Well, I can't leave the file records just out in the hall. They need to get in the
Okay.
area that's being fogged. Maybe they
You wanna
could
come in
go
the
in
town attorney's office?
town attorney's office.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, Karina and I are gonna need to get our personal stuff out of the area because they're gonna start fogging within a few minutes.
Okay. They're not gonna fog up here, are they?
No, just in the
What
land
about
management.
what about the entrance when we
I think
leave?
it's fine, because the doors to land management,
okay.
there's those double doors there, so I think it's just in that.
I don't want to be climbing out the window.
Yeah, the window's a long jump down. So we have to set a date to adjourn.
Okay, I just have one comment to make with regard to the owner of the property. The board does recall he was here at the last meeting. He was unable to attend tonight, so I'm just here representing him to address that. One last comment that I have is, no matter what you construct on this property, you're gonna need construction vehicles, and they're all gonna be the same size essentially, to construct a house that's 600 square feet or a house that's 2,000 square feet. So don't really think that's a valid argument, because that's just, the nature of redevelopment is vehicles and different contractors. It's just a matter of them being respectful to their surrounding environment. I want to pull my calendar before you start
Okay.
throwing dates.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
I also want to note that neither of the immediately adjacent neighbors showed up tonight. We will be most impacted.
Oh, where is this going?
You're not done yet.
So what are your,
We have room on February 21st, February 7th is busy. March 13th, depending on adjournments, could be available. March 27th is available. April 10th is available.
I cannot do February 21st. March 13th, you said?
March 13th, we have two on right now that could be busy. March 27th is better.
Okay, you can proceed, okay, we got personal stuff,
Thank you.
and I advised them that they could start.
I would prefer the 13th, just because that's already 2 whole months from now. and-
Okay, we have Jeffrey, Howell, and Musso on the 13th. Do you have a sense of,
Howell might
Howell be, could be
might
involved?
adjourn.
Yeah, they've adjourned several times.
He's addicted to adjourning.
March 13th.
And Musso has adjourned.
Yeah, I would say the 13th is fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a motion to adjourn to March 13th, March 13th or February 13th?
March 13th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
The administrative wetland permits are in your packets, advisory reports for the planning board. There's a 292, 39B resolution.
Good night, Daphne.
Thanks, sir.
Oh, I'm staying.
Uh-oh.
Good evening, Ben Marshall, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. The planning board has made a section 29239B referral to this board regarding the subdivision of Rothman Dynasty located at Lower Seven Ponds Road in the hamlet of Watermill. The property is adjacent to significant wetlands. This board had forwarded an advisory comment. The resolution addresses the majority of those comments, not all those comments. But the parameters and standards that are being set for the subdivision are generally consistent with the intent of chapter 325. So I would recommend that the board act to approve the draft conditions of final approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Resolved that the Conservation Board hereby approves the draft conditions of final approval for the subdivision of Rothman Dynasty, which were referred by the Planning Board to the Conservation Board on January 9th, 2024. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution of conditional approval, A 022038, Cromwell's. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second?
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Cromwell's 119 Sandu Court LLC for the proposed project on terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 023029, Stephen J. Van Kuchen Family 2020 Irrevocable Trust. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland approval granted to the Stephen J. Van Kuchen Family 2020 Irrevocable Trust for the proposed project on the terms and conditions of posted hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Preliminary review of signature determination, A 022082, Erlinda Bildner, postponed to January 24th.
Motion to postpone to January 24th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 022101, Eric Belfi and Tara Belfi, postponed to January 24th.
Motion to postpone to January 24th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 023022, Guillaume Savadier, postponed to January 24th.
Motion to postpone to January 24th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 023041, Jennifer Standing.
Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. This is a pending application for redevelopment of a residentially developed property that runs on Terrell Cove in the Hamlet of North Sea. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated December 28, 2023. The project plans would necessitate relief from the wetland construction and buffer setbacks. As such, I have put forward an alternative plan that would be wholly compliant with the wetland permit issuance standards, and would be consistent with the redevelopment plans that this board approved on the adjacent property. Essentially, I saw the ability to take virtually the entire plant and just shift it further landward. The project as redesigned would provide for a minimum wetland building setback of 100 feet and buffer setback of 75 feet, so it would be conforming. As such, we have sufficient information to make a determination, and the hearing requirement can be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Now therefore be resolved, Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Chapter 325-8E of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 023050, Abby Patricus.
This application relates to an existing residentially developed property on Flying Point Road in Watermill. The property has frontage on Burnett's Creek. The applicant is seeking reapproval of a residential expansion plan that had been authorized by this board many years ago. It was conditioned upon establishment of a wetland preservation area and restored naturally vegetated buffer, which has been established by covenant. The plans call for a two-story addition, as well as a partial second story addition on the existing home. The buffer, as required by this board and established by covenant, would be fully restored. The sanitary system would be upgraded to an IAOWTS. There is sufficient information for us to make a determination on this application. As such, the hearing requirement can be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 023097, Dwayne Fiedler and Joanne Fiedler.
This application relates to a residentially developed property on Sunset Avenue in East Quogue. that fronts the Shinnecock Bay, and also has a corridor of dominated wetlands running along Sunset Avenue. The applicant is looking to demolish an existing pool house and to construct a two-story wing in addition to an existing residence, which this board had authorized by permit. The majority of the addition would occur within the existing structural footprints, and would also take up some existing lawn and landscape area. The existing hot tub would be relocated to likewise provide sufficient area for the addition. The septic system would be upgraded to an IAOWTS. Upon my recent inspection, I found that the open space, conservation easement, and non-disturbance buffer that were established as conditions of both planning board subdivision approval and a prior permit issued by this board had been cleared and need to be restored. I have put forward a plan to the applicant that would significantly expand the existing buffers and would require that the impacted areas to the easement and the existing buffer be reclaimed by native revegetation. The applicant has indicated that they're amenable to that significant mitigation. As such, we have sufficient information to make a determination, and the public hearing requirement can be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing?
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution issued modification, CB 22017, Thomas Crowley and Julia Crowley.
This is a wetland permit modification application that has been put forward to a new residence and accessory improvements that are under construction at this time, and former vacant land. The plans call for scaling back of some of the authorized improvements, some changes to the drive area, including construction of a retaining wall to avert any erosion risk. The plans are compliant with the required covenanted naturally vegetated wetland non-disturbance non-fertilization buffer, and generally consistent with the structural and hardscape improvements that were previously authorized by this board. So there is resolution before you in order to modify the existing permit so that the applicant can go forward with those changes. I should also note that the redesign would also significantly lessen fill placement on the property, so I do support these changes to the construction plans.
Motion issued a modification?
Second.
Resolved that a wetlands permit modification be issued to Thomas Crowley and Julia Crowley for the proposed project with the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? TB.
Excuse me.
We should have a happy new year.
I'm sorry.
CB 22036, Jim Lynn Realty Corp.
So this is an existing, well, This is a residentially developed property that's frontage on Shenandoah Bay. The board had issued a permit to allow for various one-story and two-story additions, conditioned upon reclamation along the bayfront, inclusive of removal of unauthorized treated retaining walls and native revegetation, as well as establishment of covenanted naturally vegetated buffers. The project also called for an upgrade to the sanitary system to an IAOW2TS. In driving by the property, we found that the existing residence, which was going to be expanded, was fully demolished, and they were in the midst of pouring a new foundation. So they were issued a stop work order. However, the new foundation and house plans would be consistent with the pre-existing footprint and the expansion to that footprint as authorized by this board. So I'm not seeing that the construction of a new home will result in any additional adverse wetland impacts. As such, this is a resolution to approve the necessary modifications to the permit to allow this project to go forward.
Motion to issue the modification.
Second?
Resolved that a wetlands permit modification be issued to Jim Lynn Realty Corp. for the proposed project on the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Kevin.